What's going on, everybody? This is James Grandmaster Facts Voice, and you are here for another Facts Project. Today, very special guest, back once again, the pride of North Jersey. How do you say it? Matuchin?
Matuchin.
Matuchin. See, everybody gets that wrong.
It's true.
So,
You hear every kind of pronunciation. It's true.
exactly. Chris Condon, of course, back once again. The last time, of course, we got a chance to talk about news from the fallout with him and Jeffrey Allen Love. Obviously, the Peril, the Brutal Dark is still going. Issue 3 is dropping this week. But today, we're here to talk about a brand new comic that, of course, you're going to be putting together with co-writing, actually, doing Of the Earth with through Image Comics, a neo-noir eco-horror, as it's called. Now, how did you approach blending those type of genres? Because the one thing that I heard from a lot of people on social media, they were like, Tremors. And I was like, okay, I know Tremors.
Yeah.
So without one overwhelming the other, how would you describe it?
I mean, it's really funny talking about it now because it's like for me when I was coming up with the idea, it just kind of was like a no-brainer. Like it was just like, oh, this is this and this is this and this is that. There was no, thinking about let me combine these two things. For me, it was thinking about there was this one scene that I'd kind of come up with that I really liked, that I thought was really dramatic and really intense. And it takes place on this road, this deserted road. And that was kind of like the genesis of the whole idea. And then it kind of blossomed out of that. And I'm like, what story can I tell around this scene? Because I really loved this scene. And this scene is in issue 1. And I kind of was like, okay, so who's the person who is, in that scene, the person who is our lead, that we're favoring
Yeah.
here? And I'm like, okay, who's that person? And figured out who that person was. And, there was kind of this neo-noir thing getting started where, I was like, okay, so we open up on, she's at a gas station and then, she has a phone call and, it's kind of, seedy, something seedy is happening here. We don't know exactly what yet, but I was like, this is interesting. And that was like the neo-noir of it all.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, what happens when she gets to the location that she's at? And then that's the eco-horror
The
bit.
eco-horror of it.
So it's like, it starts off, neo-noir, classic neo-noir, and then it goes headlong into a horror book.
Yeah.
And to me, it just was like a no-brainer. It was like that exactly that kind of a character, the character who is on the run, who is escaping something in their past. That's like a classic neo-noir character, classic noir character as well. And what happens to that person, and that person is untethered from their former reality. They are now existing, floating.
Yeah.
I think that's the exact kind of person that would wind up in a situation like they wind up in Of the Earth. So it just, for me, it was just a matter of just telling the story, just the story kind of dictating what genres it was. There's this old like radio show that I really like a lot. It's called The Thing on the Forble Board, and that's just like kind of a straight up like hard short story.
Yeah.
But there was a nugget in that I was like, let me pull on this, and that kind of gave me some places to run in where we go later in the book. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's like almost in the beginning sense of it, the neo-noir concept is more Hitchcock type.
Oh, it's definitely Hitch. Yeah,
It's
100%.
Hitchcock running right into this eco horror.
100%. 100%. Yep.
For
Yep.
sure.
There's even, we straight up are referencing Psycho at one point. So it's like,
Oh.
it's just a lot of fun. And Charlie's a cinema nut too. I mean, he's a cinephile. So it's like, we both kind of just gravitate towards these things. And, we did a poster for the book, that I think may also be a cover. I don't know if it's been announced yet, but revealed here. But we did a poster, and we were like, let's do something that's not one of the covers. Let's do something new that's gonna kind of be splashy and attract people. And we didn't even talk about it. He just handed in the drawing, and it was an Evil Dead homage. So it was
Mm,
like even there, it's like he's pulling from things and his influences and his inspirations, and like we just do the same thing. So it was really fun to get to do that kind of thing.
that's excellent. Now, of course, you're co-writing this with
I
Andrew
am
Ehrich.
co-writing this.
Yeah, with the Andrew Ehrich.
Yeah,
Now, how does that collaboration actually work on the page? How has that been?
sure. I mean, it was fantastic. So I've known this guy for a long time. He's been a good friend of mine. He's never written a book before.
Okay.
This is his first book, and I had known him. So I used to work for Joe Dante, who made Gremlins and Gremlins 2 and a few other films, and he had this thing called Trailers from Hell,
Yeah.
and it's this site that you can watch like trailers, but also there's like commentaries, like filmmakers do commentaries. That people like Guillermo del Toro and like people like that do commentaries on these trailers. And so we were at a meeting for this thing, Trailers from Hell, me and Andrew, and we didn't know each other. I just started working for them, and we just started talking, and it was like, oh, I think this guy and I get along. And then we just became friends. And then,
Mm,
we both were creative people. So we would talk about whatever random ideas, what we were working on, what we wanted to be working on, what we want to do. And then we started working on stuff together at that point, way back when I lived in Los Angeles, we co-wrote a few things together.
yeah.
Uh, Nothing that ever saw the light of day, but we were doing stuff together. And then with this, I was working on this already, and I had asked Andrew. So I had written a outline, like a full outline,
Yeah.
like maybe 5 pages, 6 pages, something like that, and I just sent it to Andrew, and it's like, see if you what you think of this, and he liked it. And I was sort of talking to Charlie about doing a book, and I was like, do you think maybe you might want to co-write this with me and do it as a comic? And he was like, "Yeah, that sounds pretty interesting." And so we just kind of ran with it from there. From my perspective, I just wanted to give somebody a chance, kind of
Hmm.
like how I kind of stuck my foot in the door,
Yeah.
I kind of nudged my way in there just by sheer force of will. Me and Jake, we just kind of forced ourselves in there. But I wanted to, what I always kind of wished I had,
Yeah.
just, just somebody who would be like, because everybody knows somebody who's good at something, you
Yeah.
know. But how often are those people given the chance to, shine? And I think there's definitely people like that in the industry. I think James Tynan is one of those people. And it wasn't in any way, trying to be like, oh, I want to be one of those people. It was just like, no, I love working with my buddy,
Yeah.
and I admittedly was like, I am kind of busy right now, so it'd be easier with me with a co-writer, and I knew he would be great. And so it kind of became like this both professional choice but also personal choice. Like it would just be really fun to do that. And it was great. We did I wrote the first issue, and then we revised it together.
Hmm.
And so the first issue was kind of, I thought, would be a good setting, place setting for him, so that he can kind of get where I'm coming from and what I want the book to be outside of even just the outline. So I've written the first thing. I introduced the character, I introduced the concept, the whole
Yeah.
thing. So I did the first issue, we revised it together, then he wrote the second issue, then we revised that together. I wrote the third, he wrote the fourth, I wrote the fifth, and then together we wrote the sixth.
Mm.
He wrote kind of the middle of the book. He originally wrote the beginning, and then I was like, I think I have an idea for the opening, and wrote an opening. So his kind of became the middle of the book, and then I wrote the end of the book, and then again revised together. So the idea of revising together, in my mind, meant that everything would feel uniform and feel of a piece.
Yeah.
You might be able to tell kind of different approaches to panel layouts and things like that. He did something that I actually quite liked a lot, in focusing in on things that were almost like inanimate objects. Like he had this panel that he wrote that was just the phone cord.
Mm.
And I was like, and then the way Charlie drew it is awesome. Like Charlie got it, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. That is, I don't know if I would think of that, myself.
Right.
My thoughts would be on, what the characters are doing, or wide, close, like normal sort of setups, and it was really interesting to kind of see how he approached it, from a different angle. But I think at the end of the day, they do feel of a piece, which is, again, conscious choice. We want it to feel like it's one story, it's a cohesive story.
Hmm.
So we didn't ever want it to feel like it was a one person over another. Like it's very much, 100% collaboration. But yeah, that's how we approach it. So we split the workload 50-50 basically. I think I did one more issue total.
Mm.
Um, but we split the load and then just kind of, work together to bring it back to, a cohesive whole.
Now, when you're talking about you and Charlie being these self-described cinephiles, what would you give the authentic theme to Andrew's input into putting this story together?
Well, that's kind of the thing is Andrew is also a
He's
cinephile.
also a cinephile
Yeah.
because of basically where y'all started. Okay.
Yeah, and Trailers from Hell itself is like a cinephile's dream. So it's like
Yeah.
it's just like, and being in Joe's house was amazing because Joe is like, if you're a Joe Dante fan, like he has like certain things from like Gremlins or Gremlins 2, like
Hmm.
kind of lying around, or like Small Soldiers, or like any of these like old movies that he did. He just kind of had like the things lying around. But he also just had a lot of great like movie poster artwork on
Yeah.
the walls. He had an original Chuck Jones drawing that he
Oh,
did for him. So it's like a Looney Tunes drawing, so it's like things like that. It was just like, it was a really cool environment to be around and very creatively inspiring.
mm. Now,
And but yeah, so I mean, but that was kind of part of it also, was like, I was like, he gets this.
yeah,
Like he knows, he loves horror, he loves, intense thrillers, and that was what I wanted to do. And so I kind of knew that he got that already,
yeah.
before I asked him to do it. Because I wouldn't necessarily ask him to do everything with me, but like this was like an opportunity to do a thing that he's really good at and a thing that I think I'm pretty good at.
Hmm.
And I was like, why not just do it together?
Definitely.
And that was really it. There was no, I don't think he has anything planned for like what he's doing next. The idea was like, let's just do this and do this as cool and good as possible.
Absolutely.
So
There's nothing wrong with adding to the resume.
yeah, for sure.
Sure. Now, when we talked about the initial portion of this, where we talked about the noir part of this, as far as that
Sure.
description is concerned, the horror that's based in this book, are we talking about metaphorically a literal threat, or was it something more ambiguous, or is that a little bit too spoilery?
Oh, no, I think that it's safe to talk about. We talk about it in the first issue.
Hmm.
Um, the horror is very real. There's something out there
Yeah.
is the thing. So, it's very, when I talk about the thing, or I talk about, tremors, there's a reason why. It's because there's something that's, something there. There's
Hmm.
a physical entity. There is a being. And in our case, I've seen a lot of people and, reviewers and other folk to kind of refer to it as, why did I say folk? But other people that would refer to it as a cryptid.
Right.
And it kind of is, but I never thought of it as a cryptid. But there is a thing that is out there,
Gotcha.
that has been dredged up from the earth, and that is why, in part, it's called Of the Earth because it's all through the earth people, but also it's called Of the Earth because there's something that is literally of the earth.
True.
And so, I don't think there is ruining anything to say that.
No.
But it is a very much a slow burn horror comic, and that was on purpose. We wanted it to feel like we're slowly unraveling a thing, but it's like it's a for me, even though it is a slow burn, it's also a fun time. Like it's a really fun time, and I really hope people pick it up, and I really hope people enjoy it because I already know where we want to go on a sequel. But that's obviously sales contingent.
For
So
sure.
we would like to do more, but it's one of those things where it's like people got to buy it.
Yeah.
So
Well, most of your stories, I would say always have a heavy character driven lead.
Yeah.
Whether it's Otis Fallows from News from the Fallout, Ezra Cain. Now you have Tabitha Black, Tabby. She's returning home, escaping a sort like this life to get back home. But yet the tagline that you give is that home isn't what it once was, and neither is grandma. So it's almost given like this aspect of and note, this is something that I sort of see with a lot of the characters that you create is this intense aspect of survival.
Right.
So when it comes to Tabby, exactly like what suggests a deeply personal horror, or better yet, maybe like something like a family trauma, like how important is that to the story?
I mean, I think it's very important to the story. I mean, I think that it informs who people are. I mean, it informs who Tabby is as a character. I think it also informs Grandma, who is a pivotal character in the series. Um, and the idea, I mean, this is sort of her predicament is sort of influenced by what's happening in the
Hmm.
in the in the story, but I mean, it's also very much about, elderly people, what it's like to have somebody that you knew and loved who's now different, they're
Yeah.
not the same person anymore, and kind of what does that mean? How do you deal with that, especially if in Tabby's circumstance she hasn't spoken to her grandma in a decade and it was her fault, you know.
Okay.
It was her choice, it was her fault, and she decided not to follow up and then just sort of kept on that way.
Mm.
And now she's sort of realizing that she may be beyond that point, and that's a horrible thing. That's a tough thing, and I think that that's an element of horror, outside of the literal horror that's in the book. So there's things like that that kind of run through the book, and it was really interesting to kind of play with this kind of a character who is, like I said before, sort of untethered.
Hmm.
She's kind of unhooked from a life. She's floating, and I think that that's very much what the book is about too. Is about discovery, and also can you find your footing in a world like the one we live in? Is it
Yeah.
possible? Especially if you've lost your footing, like is it possible? And so that's it's about a lot of things, and it's an interesting book to explore it in, especially when there's something like bombastic happening
Yeah.
in it. But also, we want to explore interesting aspects of characters. I don't ever want to write a character that I think is boring.
Oh, for sure. And you even see that even with the character itself. Something also based in noir is the fact that you're trusting her, or better yet, how it's written, as she is the narrator of this, and
Yeah.
she's giving off the vibe of what this place used to be, of pretty much what it's become, and it's almost a perception itself. Is that
Mhm.
also part of the horror aspect of it? Is that she's telling this story, and it's like this place was never like this, especially
Mhm.
when my grandma was just, when she was her former self.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely part of the horror. I absolutely think that's an aspect of it. And yeah, yeah, I think that that's always going to be a part of it. That's for me is incredibly interesting and incredibly almost primal. Like it's something that we all experience, to an extent.
Hmm.
Some people just have this sort of experience heightened by certain aspects, but I think that is very much a universal thing. And so it's like this deep-seated thing that I think we can all identify with, and I think that is what makes it so real and so scary,
Yeah.
and so yeah, absolutely. That's part of the horror.
Yeah. And well, for one, for this next question, I got to give you kudos because you and Jacob Phillips are, of course, getting that Texas blood back once
Yeah.
again, with the
Yep.
second portion of this book, that everybody, of course, loves. But I also have to ask, because this book is also set in Texas, what's the
Sure.
fascination?
Uh, this was an environmentally specific story.
Okay.
I needed it to be. It could have been Oklahoma,
It
or
could
it
have
could have
been
been somewhere
Oklahoma.
else. It could have been. I was originally sort of keeping it, um, and nebulous. I was originally sort of not saying where it was,
Yeah.
so I didn't really want to say that it was Texas, but it was always Texas in my mind. But you may say this takes place in the universe of that Texas blood. I don't know.
Hmm.
It's
Oh,
for me that may be part of it. Because that's something we always talk about in that Texas blood is that there's something in the soil. So,
right.
um, but it's not officially part of it. I'm just, that's in my head canon. I'm like, I think that this probably happened in some other location. It's not in that county. It's somewhere else.
Right.
And, that was kind of the impetus for it. And I think also it just, I loved the idea of just like everybody sweating and it was just hot and
Yeah.
desert and just nothing. And that's, the best place to kind of capture that vibe is Texas.
Hmm.
I mean, we could have said it elsewhere, but it just, for me, it's like, I've already kind of established myself as like, I tell stories in Texas. So I'm like, why not just tell this in Texas? Um, but yeah, I mean that's not I am trying in my Marvel work to work more New Jersey stuff in.
Why not?
I moved there yeah, the new Wonder Man character, Vin. I moved him into he lives where I used to live in Jersey City. The
Okay.
exact same apartment on the exact same street. So he lives exactly where I live. Yeah,
Excellent.
so it's got fun to kind of put some New Jersey stuff into it because I'm like, part of me is like, damn, I'm neglecting my home
Yeah, I was
state.
about to say. I was like,
I keep
what?
writing things that take place in Nevada, and
I can say
there's
that
some Jersey and Brutal Dark though.
there's some Jersey and Brutal Dark. So you've obviously taken that aspect. I guess I could say that Marvel does a lot of cityscapes. So there's always like a big city
Yeah,
aspect to a lot of Marvel like settings. So
yeah.
so maybe that's a big part. But I'm glad you did it, and I'm glad you did it here too, because I was going to mention that. Now, outside of just the geographics of it, how do you build? This is another hard question. How do you build dread in a setting that's supposed to feel like home?
Well, I think that's part of it is just sort of. I mean, people have to read the book to kind of see how we do it, but
Yeah.
we do it by specifically layering in things that are just sort of off, and just kind of change the layout of what this place was. I mean, it literally starts with Tabby seeing an oil well on the property,
Right.
and she's like, "Grandma would never put an oil well in.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that there?" And so that starts the defiling of the house, basically. And her memory of the house and her memory of her family and her grandma. And so it's kind of changes things and yeah, that's what I'll say about that.
Okay. Now Charlie and Pip, Charlie Adlard and Pip Martin, who of course are the aspects of the creative team in this. The way that they pretty much establish the tone and the mood of this from how
Yeah.
both of you wrote this is fascinating. How of course the collaboration between everybody involved in this. There's obviously so many people involved in this. Like, how did that basically come together to where you started to see visually exactly what this world was basically going to be partaking? Because this town is called Solitude, so it's supposed to be
Hmm.
more so barren. So when you see Grandmom's house, it's the only thing there for a there's nothing else out there almost.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what they did together, well, first of all, I mean, it's a real joy to get to work with Pip because Pip got her start in the industry doing that Texas Blood with Jacob and
Yeah.
and myself. She was the color. My dog's barking. I apologize.
Oh, good.
But she was the color assistant on, I think it was the second arc of that Texas Blood and the third arc of that Texas Blood, and then also into Enfield. And she flats all of his stuff with his dad as well. So it's really a joy to get to work with her on this. And Charlie was actually the one that mentioned her. I was thinking of somebody else entirely, and I kind of had to eat my hat because I had already talked to them, and I was like, "Oh, Charlie wants to work with somebody else." So, but Charlie had talked to Pip about this, and and he was like, "I think I want her to do it." And I was like, I love that idea. And I had seen some of the stuff she had done before. And I was like, I'm interested to see, especially because of the fact that she sort of hasn't done that much yet. So it's like,
Yeah.
how is she going to tackle this? What is she going to bring to it? Like, how is she going to approach it differently than the few things that she's done in the past? So, um, and plus also with Charlie, knowing, this is one of the first things I've done with Charlie. So I'm like, I'm curious how this is going to turn out. Like, how are the colors going to be? Is she going to do it flat? How is she going to do it? And yeah, I don't know. There was something in Charlie's black and white artwork. I mean, we could do a noir version of this book
Yeah.
and it would work just as well because his stuff is really evocative in black and white. Especially stuff that concerns oil. That's something that it just like screams on the page. But what
Hmm.
Pip brought to it was a sort of real world, I don't know, like just a like a real world sort of just approach to things. That it just like because the book progresses from a morning to sunset, and then we go over the night, and then we wind up in the next morning. It's all
Hmm.
over one day, basically.
Right.
One day and one night. And then the way that Pip drew the colors throughout the days, you start off in sort of this like aqua morning sun sky.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing that was really impressive about her colors was the skies.
Hmm.
It wasn't just, you know, color choices. It wasn't just blue. It wasn't just black. It wasn't just day and night. It was like gradients. She
Hmm.
brought something to each aspect of the day. Each scene was its own kind of color. So
You can
yeah, I
see
mean together, huh?
there's like a sequencing, like almost like the day. You can see how the day is basically
Yeah,
progressing as you're turning the
yeah.
page.
And so I mean, that was something that she brought to, it, and it was just, it's incredible. And you need somebody smart to work with who's going to do something like that. So, um, I wish I could say more other than just that they're just incredibly good at what they do. And I'm so glad to be a part of Pip's career and now, part of Charlie's. I mean, Charlie's a legend,
Hmm.
so to know that this is a small part of the legacy that he's leaving, for everybody who loves comics. People are going to look back 100 years from now and be like, okay, this guy drew The Walking Dead and he also drew this other book of the Earth. Like, what.
Yeah.
So, and I'm, really honored to be a part of that. So, I don't know. But yeah, I'm in awe of everything they're doing. And they just keep getting better and better too. They were great in issue one, but, seeing where things are progressing and things are going. Pip is currently working on issue five. She's almost finished with that. And then Charlie's inking issue six right now. And Charlie's issue six, I think, is some of the best stuff he's done. Really dramatic, really intense.
Yeah.
And he, had some really interesting layouts in it as well. So it's really fun to kind of get to see how the black and white words on a page, of a script
Yeah.
translate into, actual visuals and having actual life brought into them from these two, fantastic creators. So it's really interesting. But I mean, that's, not to, ding any other of our collaborators. I mean, Michael Tivey does a fantastic job on the design. I mean, that logo design is great and I love it. Um, and obviously Hassan Otsmane Elhaou on letters brings a lot to the lettering as well. With every project I do with Haas, I'm always impressed by how he approaches things in different ways, unique ways,
For
especially for
sure.
somebody who has so much work.
Yeah.
He's like
It's on
constantly
everything.
putting a book out. Yeah.
Now,
So,
oh man. Now, of the Earth, there's a lot of duality in this. Now,
mhm.
ultimately, um, would you say there's a humanity's relationship with nature? Is it,
Absolutely.
would you be it ultimately pessimistic or hopeful or both?
I think my perspective is that nature doesn't care.
Yeah, I'm gonna get by either way.
And I think that's the problem. And I think that's kind of the core thesis
Yeah.
is, what happens when you've pushed too far. And that's kind of where we're at, and so that's kind of what the story's about, and and that's the eco horror aspect of it
Yeah.
is, um and I talked to some oil men about the book in research for the book. The first guy I talked to was actually during the pandemic. So this is far, far back.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of how these things evolve. Is it's like over time you're like kind of like piecing things together here and there. And this was an idea that I had during the pandemic and kind of was like, you know, figuring it out. And I was like, you know what, I need to talk to somebody who knows the industry, the oil industry. Because one of the main characters in the book that we haven't met yet, who shows up in issue 2, is a guy named Thomas Morton, and he's a supervisor
Yeah.
for this company, Fossil Oil. And yeah, so I talked to this oil man, and he kind of ran me through like the logistics of, what would work, what wouldn't work, like why this is this way, why this isn't this way, like what the terminology is.
Mm-hmm.
And but I mean, even then, he was kind of like, oh, they say that it's, fracking is bad, and and he had certain opinions about that. So it was like interesting to talk to somebody who has, an idea of what the industry is and what the environmental impact is, because he was a geologist too,
Oh, wow.
so he knows the earth. So it was interesting to talk to somebody like that I never anybody who has an opinion of that sort. So. And then I talked to another guy at a different date about some other aspects of the book, and those aspects actually changed after that conversation
Mm-hmm.
because I had it going a certain way, and he was like, actually, it wouldn't work that way with oil; it would be this way. And that happened twice, and so it was like, okay, so then improved the story, I think. So because it would have been a little bit more, I don't know, like it wouldn't have been bad, but I just think it would have been more, I don't know, almost not cookie cutter exactly, but I think that I made the book better,
Yeah.
by doing something that was realistic, that was um and based in reality, even though it is like sort of big and uh bombastic because it's a story, it's a comic book, but some of these aspects are based in, real life.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Almost in the same breath, you think about the geographics that you chose, even though, with Texas, being how it's an oil-based region, oil being the concept of being like the blood of the earth, and pretty much there's an exploration that's pretty much happening. Guilt, um, personal, environmental, maybe even if you're going down the line, maybe generational, like that.
Hmm.
Is that horror basically creating something that's always been there?
Yeah, I think so. I think that that's what horror is really good at, is exploiting the flaws in humans. You
Yeah.
know, I think that that's kind of the thing. Always, I mean, I could pick any character, um, across the genre, but I think that that's one of the important things of the genre is to have a character who has a flaw, and then that flaw is exploited by whatever the thing is, whether it's a psychopath dressed in a Michael Myers costume, or
Mhm.
or it's Jason, or if it's this thing in of the earth. It's like what those things are. They find the raw parts of people, and they that's the part that they attack.
Yeah.
So, and that's certainly an aspect of this book, and it comes into play much later, she's 5 and 6 specifically, but it's these things are absolutely generational, they're absolutely personal, and that's integral to this kind of story, I think. I mean, even if you're not hitting people over the head with it,
Yeah.
it's an important part of the story. So yeah.
Definitely. Now, for the most part, what what do you think will surprise readers the most about this book?
I think it's really intense. And I know that I've done intense things in the past, but I think that this is sort of intense out the gate, in a way that,
This book was intense.
yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, I know that it's kind of my thing to do that, but I think that it's really intense. But I think maybe something that's more surprising about it is I think I haven't really done anything so almost kind of overtly like a horror thing like this. I mean, News from the Fallout has horror in it. It certainly has horror elements and pulls from horror.
Yeah,
But I think that this is maybe the most straightforward in a lot of ways, and it also isn't in a lot of ways. So that's the I always kind of hate putting things in a pigeonholing things because it's like I'll say one thing and I'm like I really don't think that's true. Like it's partially true. Um, like in a lot of ways because I mentioned this. There's a cryptid before, and I mean in a lot of ways this is a monster book.
yeah,
And so, and that's one of the things that I mean when I say that it's more straightforward, but it's also not your typical monster book.
yeah.
It's very much of the kind of ilk of things that I do in like That Texas Blood. It's a slow burn, intense, um, almost kind of thriller drama, you know, but it has this thing that's in it. And and that's what's really interesting. I think those are the best kind of horror stories in my mind are the ones that kind of toe that balance, and it's not just one thing. It's not just over the top one way or the other. It's kind of it rides this line, and that was where we wanted to be. We wanted to be on that line, you know.
Now, how did you how were you able to basically get through the dialogue of Tabby and her grandmother, being as how her grandmother is pretty much broken, and she's seeing her for the first time in so many years, and realizing just how sunken she really is?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because Grandma is sort of she's nonverbal
Yeah.
when she's so it's like that's from my perspective that sort of you're talking to this idea of what this person is or what this person was,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to and I mean I've had this with people that I've known in my life and haven't seen in years. It's like you try to find that thing that was that connected you, that thing that was between you, and that thing may be gone now. And so you're still trying to pull at that thing, and it's just for whatever reason you're not having the success with it. And I mean, in her case, it's a one-sided conversation. Um, and I think and that yes, I just wanted to approach it in a way where I was like thinking about because it's funny because I haven't really talked about this so much, but my father was in the hospital and all that, and kind of, you're talking to somebody that's not like 100% there. So you
Mm-hmm.
talk to them in a different way than you would talk to somebody, on the street.
Yeah.
Um, because it's a very intense situation, and so you're talking to somebody in a in a situation that you're not sure that they're going to get out of, So it's like a
Right.
very kind of intense sort of moment, and I think that you're kind of approaching it with some delicacy. But that's also in our story. I mean, that's something that's she does, but then circumstances pull
Mm-hmm.
her to do certain things or to react certain ways. Um, and yeah, it's definitely something interesting to play with throughout the book.
Yeah. And I guess you, for the most part, you dive into a factor where the intensity starts to brew, and you come to a question. There's almost like an impasse to where it's like, okay, what's scarier? Is it the unknown, or
Hmm.
something in intimately familiar that's turning completely wrong?
Yeah. I think that's exactly it. And I think that's part of it too, is like you want to give the character kind of a fork in the road. Like you can go this way, like you can still leave, you
Yeah.
can still go, but you still got to deal with your problems.
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so I think that's kind of an interesting place to put a character is like, where they have, two kinds of um, things hitting them at the same time. It's not just one thing because I think that that's less dynamic too. You want to give them multiple facets to kind of work themselves out of. So, I think it's interesting to kind of play with multiple things at once. I mean, yeah, it's like, we're playing with a literal horror and then we're playing with a sort of psychological horror at the same time. And I think that's a more dynamic way to approach a story, personally.
Yeah, the way that pretty much built this up, it's almost surreal because you obviously have this book out right now, and the way that you're kind of like weaving through suspense, all while adding a World War II driven character, ancient mythology, and secret organizations. Just like all in one, all in pretty much one particular person. Like when we're talking about Tabitha, and then we're talking about like an Ezra Cain, is like these totally multifaceted, multidimensional people that
Yeah.
are coming back into a world that they're trying to just conquer out of their own emotions, and they're not too sure exactly what it's going to bring. With Ezra, he's like an incredibly violent person. It's like, so it's like, okay, he's always on the go. I mean, both an archaeologist, private investigator, obviously reading that book. It's almost like an Indiana Jones character in
Yeah.
crime noir, but somebody who's just like on edge 24/7. To where with Tabitha, like it's like every step further she gets deeper into it, she's like, should I act out? Should I be more emotive? Because all of this is crazy. I want to act out, but I have nobody to vent this to. My grandmother's not talking to me. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
I'm in this world watching all of this happen, and I can't reach out to anybody to understand how this is like, to understand what's happening.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the major frustrations for her is that, she hasn't spoken to her grandma in 10 years and then she comes back home and she wants to talk to her and instead of, I mean, it could be worse. She could be dead, but, she comes back and her grandma is, nonverbal and she's talking to her and it's like she's not getting the satisfaction of the conversation that she's wanted to have for the
Yeah,
last, however many years. So, or an argument or whatever it is that she wants, she's not getting that. So it's like I feel like she's just this like kind of lost character. Like she doesn't have every chance she tries to put herself in a place, she can't stay there.
yeah,
Like she's constantly forced to be on the move, like constantly, both mentally and physically, like on the move. And so it's an interesting place to put a character, especially a character that is dealing with so many issues.
yeah. And then
But
coming in.
Ezra's also got his issues.
Oh, for
He is a
sure.
violent person. He is like constantly just like trying to get in a fight.
Yeah,
And so maybe sometimes that puts him in a bad position. But he's also a very dynamic character, and he's at his core he's a good guy.
he
I
is.
think that's why people like him. But he's also got a lot of issues.
Hmm.
And, fortunately for us, most of the time, he's, up against the bad people. So they get the brunt of the anger and the issues.
Now I didn't get a chance to ask you when this first came out, like to be a part of like this resurgence with
Yeah.
Vertigo. Like, how did that feel going into it? It was like, okay, they went through their whole DC Black label, even though that's still there, and but
Yeah.
essentially Vertigo being this imprint that's kind of like etched in a lot of people's minds, whether it was like V for Vendetta, History of Violence, to bring forth your type of story and to have that name attached to your comic book had to be surreal.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, it was from the start. So when we were approached, it was the first email that I have was March of 2023.
Yeah.
And what happened then, I mean, it was real simple. Jake and I were trying to get Marvel to pay attention to us, like, two clowns. We were waving our hands on Twitter and going, "Hey, look at us. We can do a good job." So we were
Hmm.
posting like pages that we would do, or I posted a script page. Like, it was honestly a fun little story. It was about Short Round pulling the sword from the stone, and he became the de facto king of England. Like, it was like fun, but Marvel wasn't paying attention to us, and we were getting a lot of people going like, "Oh yeah, that would be really cool," but like nobody was saying anything. And then I got an email from Chris Conroy,
Hmm.
and he said, "Hey, do you want to do that? But do that at DC and do your own thing. We're going to revitalize Vertigo. If you're interested, let me know." And right from the get go, I was like, "Wow, that's an
Yeah.
incredible opportunity," because this is also a story I've been working on for like a couple of my stories. I wrote and drew this as a comic in high school, and I still have some of those pages and some of the designs and stuff. And so it's kind of fun to, see it come from that to now being a Vertigo book. And it had a long, long story. I mean, it was like, a long history. I was writing and drawing it as a comic in high school, and then in college, I went to a film school for a while, and I had a screenwriting class, and they wanted us to write a screenplay for that class, like a full 90-page screenplay. And I was like, well, I have this one idea. I want to write this screenplay at some point, so let's do it. So I did it as a screenplay. Never did anything with that. And then when we were doing that Texas Blood, Jake and I were like, well, our book is on hiatus because of the pandemic. So we started a Patreon. And why did we start the Patreon? We were releasing a digital comic called Brutal Dark.
Yeah.
And we did 3 issues of it, and then we had to stop because we got too busy. Um, but it's been this thing that's constantly been there, and like I've tried to do it many times, and then it's finally happening, and it's not only happening, it's happening with Vertigo. You
Yeah.
know, um, in the same with the same publishers, Superman and Batman, and Green Lantern and Flash and Wonder Woman and Martian Manhunter and everybody that I love in DC.
Yeah.
It's there, but not only that, it's part of the storied imprint, alongside Why the Last Man and Preacher
Yeah.
and Animal Man and Doom Patrol and all. Even though, yeah, some of those were kind of DC proper and then were later co-opted, but still, it's like just to be a part of that history now. I mean, even though it is, the new version of it, that's not the same imprint, but it's a new version of the imprint. It's still cool to have that imprint on there and have them releasing books like 100 Bullets,
Yeah.
and having that imprint, remaining is really cool. It's definitely like a dream come true, and it's like full circle because I've mentioned this a few times. But there was at my local comic shop growing up in Metuchen. We had a local shop for a while. I think they closed down in like 2004, 2005. But we had a shop, and it was like a long shop, like kind of like a long thin shop. And in the front, he had like glass cases with trading cards in them and stuff like that. And then he had toys
Yeah.
and the new comics, and then in the back was all the back issues and in the long boxes. And on the back wall, and you could see it from the front door when you went in, was a Preacher poster.
Mm.
And I remember being so intrigued by that poster. And just, I hadn't read it, and I still wouldn't read it for a number of years, but it was always kind of like in my head of like, that book looks dangerous. I don't know what it is, but it looks dangerous, and I want to find out more about it. And so it's kind of like Vertigo's kind of been hanging over my whole comic experience since I was a kid.
Right.
So it's really, kind of full circle to now have a Vertigo book, with my name on it.
That's amazing. So just to have that like full circle now, in the beginning of that, with all these brand new Vertigo titles that are pretty much out right now, whether
Yeah.
it's Bleeding Hearts, End of Life, and yours, as well as the ones that are basically going to follow. Was
Yeah.
there like a section of y'all that they pretty much like put everybody on a conference call and be like, "Hey, this is how the rollout's going to go"?
uh Eventually. I mean, it was kind of like everybody was just off doing their own thing, and I
Yeah.
kind of, me and Dennis would talk, and he'd be like, "Are you doing a Vertigo book?" And I'm like, "I'm doing a Vertigo book." And then, we kind of figured out who was doing a Vertigo book. And then, but it wasn't like they didn't sit us down and go like, "You're the next,
Yeah.
class of Vertigo creators," or anything like
Okay.
that.
Got you.
Um, eventually, once they started doing like putting the marketing stuff together, they started putting us together, and we were on conference calls and retailer calls and things like that. But I mean, largely it was very much a separate thing, which I think is right, because I mean it's not like a intertwined world. It's
Right. It's a
they're each
but
their own stories, and
yep.
it's very much sort of the creator driven, creator owned title. Each title is a creator owned story, so it's like it made sense to kind of keep everybody in their own spaces, and then once you're actually like releasing them, then bring everybody together. But yeah, there's no like staff meetings or anything like
Yeah,
that.
I don't know why like it like popped up in my head, but like, okay, look, this is Vertigo. Regardless of if they're even weaving in an intertwined universe, which they're not. It
Yeah,
it's all like to be a part of like Vertigo. I mean, I would think it's not the regular solicitations that you would see in it like a monthly thing. It's kind of like something sectioned off to themselves. But like you're like, here's everything Marvel and DC, but here's all the Vertigo titles. Like
yeah,
somewhat there. Like this is the good shit. Like it's something like that. And, like where all these like these real feel good stories to where you understand it. Like these gritty creator owned
yeah.
comics are basically being made that people just like take beyond the bars of what you would see in like a normal comic book.
Yeah, and it's really cool to see DC taking a kind of big swing like this, and it's an interesting thing. I mean, it's not something that everybody does. I mean, that each publisher kind of had their own imprint back in the day. I mean, Marvel had Icon, and they had
Yeah.
Epic, and DC had their separate labels outside of even Vertigo.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's really cool to see them kind of taking the swing and doing something unique and different in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's definitely a lot of creator-owned books out there, but I think that this sort of, when once you're a Vertigo book, there's an expectation, and I
Yeah.
think that we all nailed that expectation. Um, at least in our own minds. But yeah, I don't I don't know where to go from there, but
No, look, I even feel just off the rip because obviously, my introduction to you was through your image work, through that Texas Blood, through News from the Fallout,
mhm.
and so on and so forth. So your creator-owned properties are basically what led me to know about your more mainstream, like the time where you basically tackled superheroes, where you started to do Green Arrow, and then you started to do Ultimate Wolverine. So it was like I got to know you here to see
Yeah,
these well-rounded characters that you brought to life through some of these series that you brought and basically told these broader than life stories. And then yeah, I'm going to attach this to somebody that you already know, Oliver Queen. Why not? Boom. Like I guess it's more so full circle, especially with a lot of people that are doing creator owned works. It's kind of like, okay, if I give you a character that everybody knows, I don't want you to be the quintessential guy to be like, don't do what this person did with Oliver Queen. I want to know what you would do.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it's been great. And I mean, I've been really fortunate that they've kind of let me do what I want to do, to a large extent with most of the books that I'm doing. At the big two. I mean, especially Green
Good.
Arrow. Green Arrow was, I was surprised when they greenlit the entire thing the entire outline for Freshwater Kills, the first story arc. Like they, had no questions about it. No real comment about it. We kind of ran into some headaches later. There was just some sort of thoughts about what Green Arrow can and can't do, even though I had sort of arguments for why he would do certain things. We had to kind of change things here and there.
Yeah.
But overall, it was largely they let me run and do a story that I think was really interesting, and I don't think there's any other DC book out there like it right now. Mainline DC book. Um, and so that was really special and unique to be able to do that. And then same thing with Ultimate Wolverine. That was, I'd planned these 12 issues to be this one thing, and I didn't know anybody was going to read the book. I thought it was going to be, you know, I thought, I know that it was a big book now, but thinking about it from the time, I am the guy that writes that Texas Blood and the Infield Game Massacre. And like, I have respect from certain
Mm-hmm.
people in the industry, but I'm not like, the biggest name in the industry, and I'm aware of that. I'm not, I'm not an idiot. So in my mind, I'm like, it'll probably do okay because it's Wolverine. But it was really interesting to kind of see how much of an impact it had. I mean, we got a toy, which is pretty crazy.
Do you have it in your house?
Not yet. But no, but that's really crazy. I mean, I said that when we came up with the design for it. I was like, that's gonna be a toy.
Mhm.
And I also was like, that's gonna be in video games. It's gonna be a toy, and it's in all. So it's like, you could talk a big game, but I didn't expect any of it, and it's really nice that it ended up happening the way that it happened. So, but yeah, I think I know, I think most people know that where my heart truly lies is with my first love, which is creator owned comics. I
Mhm.
mean, that's at the end of the day, those are the things that I own. That's where my heart is, and that's in books like that, Texas Blood, which is returning, and with Of the Earth and just in the Fallout, and all the other books that I've done. So
For sure. For sure. And I gotta give you and Andrew credit. This is a beautiful start to a terrorizing book that I can't wait to dive into a lot more. So
thank you.
for Of the Earth, of course, being coming out next month, I can't wait to see it myself. For sure.
For sure. I can't wait to hold it in print myself either.
Absolutely, man. So I look, I appreciate you doing this with me. This is always good. It's good to have you on.
Likewise, good to see you.
For sure. Obviously, FOC is next week for Of the Earth. Issue 3 of the Peril Brutal Dark comes out tomorrow. From
Yeah,
the time that we're
out this
talking
week.
about this, issue 3 drops tomorrow. So only good things. Only good things from this on out, man. You
All
know?
right, my fingers crossed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So for everybody here at the Facts Project, Chris Condon, James Grandmaster Facts Voice, we appreciate everybody here here at the Facts Project, and thank you guys for, of course, for tuning in, and we are out.